do this. I was going to do this before classes started, but I'll do it right now. So there's going to be two parts, two resources for the textbook. The first is the Canvas site, and then also Top Hat. So Top Hat is the textbook for those of you who didn't have me last semester. It's the electronic textbook, and I'll go through and show you. You should have gotten an email, one from me and then one from somebody at the company, sort of giving you directions, but I'll clear up a couple things. So my little video here of how to use this would be at start here. So if you go, oh, I zoned out, then you can go back here after this afternoon and you can take a look at what I'm going to say. So what we have is, in terms of the course, on Canvas is where the links to the lecture videos, links to problems that I'm going to give you, and I'll lay out the format of how we're going to do things this semester. It's going to be almost the same as last semester, but a little bit different in a couple places. So we have, as is good practice, we have links for you to get help, which I never would have thought of putting in, except I went to a workshop where they said, well, this is a good practice to put in, so there it is. Also, what you'll find is down here in the learner support button that everybody has, you find the syllabus accessibility statement, the syllabus statement on bias, but then you also have the link to the help desk, which that's always been there. People don't always know that it's there. But then I have the other help if you need, including the link to the Top Hat people. So then we have my appointment calendar. If you want to make an appointment, this link will take you to my appointment calendar. You can make appointments in 15-minute increments. Many of you know how to do that. But that's where that link is. And then we've got the syllabus and lecture schedule. Notice that I have more stuff than you do, because anything that's over here you don't see. So we have the syllabus, which you can read through, which I'll pull up in a moment, and then also the lecture schedule. So the lecture schedule I will be putting in each day's class. Okay, then I'll show you that. So we've got the course. So we've got the course syllabus and the schedule for the Top Hat topics. Then we've got last semester's previous exams. I'm not quite sure if I put last semester's semester exams in, but I will. And then all of the previous exams from before, so you can use those as practice problems or previous exams. They're not really practice exams, they are the real exams that I have that I've done. So where the bulk of the material is in each day's folder. So here we have January 14th. And so when you go to each day's folder, the first thing that you're going to see is you're going to see the reading assignment or the materials that we're going to go over that day. So in this case, it's 13. We're starting in chapter 13 down to 13.4. Okay, and so then that will then link you to the Top Hat. It won't link you to it, but that's the Top Hat chapters, sections that we're going to go over that day. So what you can do is you can either, it's going to be up to you. I would prefer you kind of take a look at that ahead of time, but there also may be a lecture video that goes with this. So you could do either one or both. You could, there will be a link. If there's a video, there'll be a link to that underneath that in the chapters, or you can go through and read the textbook. Like I said, it's going to depend on your style. Maybe you would want to watch the video and then after class read the text, or maybe you want to read the text and watch the video. I would ask you to do one of those two things, because the first question I'm going to ask is, I'm going to say, is there any material that you looked at that we need to go over? I may ask you questions at the beginning of class and then see if there's a question that people missed, then that's going to be an automatic starting point. But I'm still going to start with, do you have any questions? And I'm going to assume that you either read through these sections or that you looked at the video. Now, because I have not necessarily gone back and re-recorded videos, there's going to be times when I'm going to just kind of lecture through that material. So there won't be a video to watch unless I have time to go back to re-record a new video, which I may or may not do. I may just live lecture that. And that's like Friday. There'll be a Friday there's no video to go with Fridays. So I may just live lecture that. But again, you could read the book beforehand if you wanted to have a general idea as what's going on. So the reading assignment is there. Then after the reading assignment, we have then for today, we have the pre-class lecture notes, the PowerPoint notes, which I printed out for you. In general, you'll print those out on your own. I just printed out for today and Wednesday. And for Friday, there aren't any right at the moment because it's kind of a newer set of material than what I've had previously. Then you'll see that there's a video, and the video link will take you to the YouTube lecture video. So this material linked up fairly well with stuff from the past, and so that that video, there's a link to that. So you could look at that, but we won't bother with it. Then so again, you can either look at the book, watch the video, both. Again, if this was truly a flipped class, which is getting closer to that now, people would watch the video before they came to class. What I would ask is that when you're watching the video, okay, maybe 1.5 times might speed things up a little bit, but the whole idea is not to get through the video in the shortest amount of time possible. It's to go through the video like you would if you were sitting here. Okay. So I think 2 times, which is what people were doing last year, which prompted me to go to the Top Hat book, is too much. Okay. And remember, you can stop, take notes, start it back up again, review a section. That's the whole idea of putting the lectures on video to begin with. Okay. So this is not a checkbox. Oh, I watched the video. I mean, I could go all out faith and walk around and see how many notes you took on the video to know whether or not you have actually watched it. But don't make me do that. Okay. So that's the whole idea. And then that'll tell you, okay, I don't understand this. Then you should be saying, hey, can you go back over this? Or can you go over that? Because that's where we're going to start every day. So that's where the video is. I do have some pre-lecture quizzes that I may use, but last year people had to go through and answer these multiple choice questions. You're going to be doing the electronic questions in Top Hat for those. And then there may be some homework problems that will be due. Why am I on the 16th? Here we're on the 14th where we should be. So then, for instance, there is a review take-home quiz that's going to be due on January 23rd. So I'm giving you over a week. So one of the problems is we have to remember what went on last semester. It's only been, a month? But I'm sure that a lot of that information has just gone away. And we need to get it back in here. So in order to help you, I have given you 100+ questions of review, hopefully, from last semester. Now, it's not everything from last semester. When I originally came up with these problems, they were like the questions that were most missed on the final exam. So I think by the time you go through these questions, it'll get you back into thinking about first semester organic. And so they're all multiple choice of some sort. I have the Scantrons. I will collect up the Scantron forms next Wednesday. Okay. So you have some time. If you have questions, you can come and ask me about them. But hopefully this will provide a review from last semester. And I'm sorry I have to do that, but I have to do that. Okay. So that should at least begin to bring us back up to speed. Also this semester, what I'm going to do is the electronic homework problems that are in Top Hat, which I'll go to in a moment, the problems in the chapter are going to be the ones that are due and graded. Okay, the ones that are at the end of the chapter I've made available to you, but I've made them available as review questions, meaning that they're not going to be graded, so that you can go through those. I may use some of those in class, but what I've decided is that 2 sets of electronic homework problems is an awful lot. And so I'm substituting the end of chapter homework problems for these written by me take-home problems that we'll hopefully get nearly every day. Okay, where you're going to write out the answer. So we're going to do both of those. So when you go back after lecture, or you could do this before, it doesn't matter. When you go back through the reading assignment, those problems are basically going to be what's due. But remember that I can only check the problems after the end of a chapter. So technically you could let all the problems ride and then do them the night before they're due. I wouldn't recommend that. I've set them all up. I set them all up ahead of time so that you don't have to worry about, oh, this is wrong or this isn't released. You have 2 opportunities at each question, and that it'll show you. I think that it'll show you that correct answer. But remember, all of these problems are what we call low stakes formative assessments. They're going to tell you what you don't know and what you need to work on. And again, you want to do that before you take the exam. If you don't do any problems before the exam, number 1, you're going to be taking a considerable hit on the problems, on the percentage of class problems. But number 2, you don't want to practice on the exam. You want to practice before you get to the exam. Okay. So hopefully then between these 2 sets of problems, it'll be a little bit better in terms of preparation for the exams, because my written problems will look very similar. Now the electronic problems help us within each of the sections, and there's a lot of those that are just simply in multiple choice format that I could ask you. So those are going to be due. Basically, I think I'm still going to have 2 periods after we finish the chapter. The in-class problems will be due. Okay, but if you keep up on them, it'll be a little bit easier. All right. So that's how we're going to structure things. And so in terms of, I'll pull up the syllabus here in a minute. It will have that. 2 sets of problems. Take home written out problems, and then the electronic problems in the chapter from the Top Hat. But again, the other problems are available, the end of chapter problems. But you can do those as more problems if you'd like. I'd suggest maybe taking a look at them. I wouldn't totally ignore them. But this way, I think it'll be a little bit more reasonable amount of time. Right, so then the due dates will be here, and I'll have the due dates. Since those are in there, they should show up somewhere on your front page of Canvas to say this is stuff that's due. All right, then I do have more more written out practice problems, because I've got a lot of years of practice problems. So these practice problems here are not graded. They are just practice problems that you can do like before the exam, or if you want to do more written out problems. They do have usually a narrated answer key with them. So you'll see some problems, and then you'll see the narrated answer key. Again, in class I might use some of these problems as well for us to do after I've answered everybody's questions. Okay, but they're there. So you've got more problems than you know what to do with. The more problems you do, maybe hopefully the more prepared for the exam you'll be. And the old exams can be used as practice problems as well. Although again, the old exams are just the answer keys, so you've got to somehow remove the answers before you do the problems. A pair of scissors, digitally erasing it, whatever. Okay, so then that's how each folder is going to be set up. Again, I have more stuff on here because I've got 5 years of stuff stacked up here that I haven't removed. So you'll just see for today, you'll see everything that's got a green check on it. So after class, if you want to go back, if you want to go and watch the video from today that'll deal with naming, I'm going to talk about I'll talk about some of that, probably more reactions. Then you can go ahead and do that, and then you can look at the lecture textbook and do some of the problems. Okay. Then on Wednesday, if you want to watch that video ahead of time, you can do that, or again read, because on Wednesday I'll start with, do you have any questions? And then if not, then I'll throw out some problems for us to do either in groups or individually with the top hat system, where you can click in your answer or draw it in. Okay. So let's just go to the top hat system. So for instance, today I'm starting in chapter 13. If I go to the top hat system, I'm going to go right to the courses because I tried to explain this in the email. For those of you who were in last semester's class, you don't have, and bought a year-long subscription, you don't have to pay for a second semester. But it is a different class. You know, they have to put everybody in the same class. So what happens is that, for instance, if you were in the morning section, you were in 8234666. And so what happens is when you go to sign up for the new morning class, which is 341,903, then it'll automatically convert your subscription over to the second semester. At least it's supposed to. But everybody needs to be in this 341 class. So that way when I ask you questions, everybody's answering on the same. Well, you won't even see the questions if you're not logged into that class. You still have access to the first semester class. And for those of you who weren't in last semester, this new class includes all the stuff from last semester. So actually you'll get the entire electronic book from last semester, including some of the problems that I asked in class. I didn't see them all, but I'm not sure why that is. But some of the problems from last semester are actually still in this new version of the book. So what we do is this electronic book, there's the electronic book and then there's the classroom. And so you have to get the electronic book and access to the classroom as well. Because the classroom is where I'm going to ask you questions and you're going to go ahead and pull out a device, your phone, a computer. It'll be a little bit more conducive in this room to use the computer or some sort of tablet. If you need one, I'll have a couple with me. So that way you can answer the questions as I ask them. Also then if you say, well, I don't understand this question in the text, then I can pull it up. And then we can take a look at it. Okay. So that's the section that you're going to want to sign up for. Okay. And again, everybody will get access to the entire textbook. At the end of the semester, and I'll verify this when we get closer to the end of the semester, what you do is you're gonna ask for this book to be continued so that you'll have access to it as long as they exist as a company. So you will have access to the textbook after the end of the semester. That was the only reason I went with this book, so that it's not like 1 or 2 years. So whatever you've purchased, you're going to have access to it. Okay. So, and all the problems and things, at least from what they've told me. All right, so that's the morning code. Is section 1 is 341903, and you should have got an invitation for that from, I forget what his name is at Top Hat. Okay. If you're having troubles with me, you can come and see me, or you can contact them, and we'll figure it out. We're not going to use the system today for today's class, but I would like to at least ask some questions on Wednesday. Okay, any questions on that? So if we log into that class, then what you're going to see is I've made available all of the sections of the textbook up to this point. So from last semester, I made them accessible as reviews. But there's different color things here. These are actual graded homeworks, and then the yellows are not graded. So if we went to chapter 13, we would then have our electronic textbook, and then it'll go through with the triple bond, for instance. A lot of material. There's probably more material in here than there is in my video or my notes. That's okay. There's always more material there. And then of course there's like keeping it real with this antibiotic that has a triple bond. It's got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-membered ring. We didn't get to 9-member rings last semester. So it's kind of showing you that this diene, along with a carbon that it doesn't have a bond here. That would be a 5-bonded carbon. It goes directly through. There's a huge ring, and that's actually a class of antibiotics that I think come from sea creatures. Not living sea creatures after they give themselves for the science. Then we extract all the compounds out of them. So that's the electronic book, and then there'll be questions. At some point. So there's question 13.1. What's the major product of this reaction, which I'll go over here in a minute or two. Okay. So the easiest thing to do is to do these problems within a day or so of after we've gone over the material, so it's fresh. But again, I'll be writing down the scores of the ones you've answered correctly. Remember, you get 2 shots. So. Okay, so that's the electronic textbook. When I want, I can ask you questions, and you'll log in, and the question will be sent out to your device. You'll answer it, and then we'll look at the class results to see whether we got it right, whether we're at 50-50. If we're at 50-50 on answers, then I'll have you discuss with a person near you, what you think, and then we'll revote. I may do a little bit more drawing this semester. Which I don't know how easy that is on a computer but we'll figure all of that out. So that's the classroom part of the Top Hat that you have to have access to. Okay. All right, so that should be everything. So the Top Hat stuff will have the electronic homework problems and the textbook material. The Canvas will have links to the videos, as well as then the homework problems, and also then the PowerPoint notes if there are those. Also, when I record the class video, that will go into this folder so that you can go back and review the class if necessary, or maybe sections if you need to. Okay. We're not going to do spectroscopy in lecture. Although, we may talk a little bit about that. The The spectroscopy part's going to be done in the lab. And that's going to be done the first 4 weeks. So we're not going to be doing any lab the first 4 weeks. We're going to be doing spectroscopy. Okay. All right, any questions? So actually this video is not going into the start here, because start here is supposed to be short and how to find your way around. And there's too much extracurricular stuff in there. So I will be recording a shorter start here if you forget or if you want to remember where everything's at. Okay. All right, and let's talk about chemistry. Right? Because that's syllabus talk. Syllabus talk gets shorter and shorter each semester. But I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Oh, well, thanks. Okay, triple bonds. One of the things that we did do a lot last semester, our first few weeks or the first month or so, we did do a lot of naming. And so I'm not going to really talk about that right at the moment. But what I'm going to talk about is reactions. How do you make triple bonds, and then some of the reactions that we can do with triple bonds. Triple bonds. So the first thing is, how do we make triple bonds? And there's two ways that we can make triple bonds. The first way we can make a triple bond is through what's called a double elimination reaction. So the first part of these notes deal with the structure of alkynes. Also then it talks about the stability of alkynes. So just to refresh, we have two different types of alkynes. We have one where the triple bond is at the end of the chain, and we have one where the triple bond is inside of the chain or in the middle of the chain, or not at the end of the chain, I guess is the best case. So the ones at the end of the chain are called terminal alkynes, and then the ones that are not at the end of the chain are called internal alkynes. And we could have used that terminology for alkenes as well. We could have said, well, this is a terminal alkene or this is an internal alkene. But we do use this a lot for alkynes. The primary reason is that I can do more with a terminal alkyne because I have this hydrogen, and I could actually remove that hydrogen or deprotonate it, which I'll show you in a moment, and then that makes a good nucleophile. So when we're looking at alkynes here, which one of those two is more stable? Based on what you know about alkenes, which one is more stable, Haley? The internal one. So this one turns out to be more stable. Why? because a triple bond's like a double bond, and so the more alkyl groups you have attached to the triple bond, the more stable it is. Here, our maximum number is 2. So we can have two alkyl groups attached, 2 or 1. Now, if you have just one, if you have no alkyl groups attached, then you have C2H2, which is called acetylene. And acetylene is a gas. Acetylene's used, probably its biggest use is in welding, because it burns really hot. And so if you want to have a good torch to melt metal and do welding, you use an acetylene torch, which is a mixture of oxygen and acetylene. In the old days, the coal miners, when they used to have the helmets and there was no electronic or no electrical light, there wasn't a light bulb, they took pieces of carbide, which had a solid form of basically a salt of acetylene. They put a drop of water, it would generate acetylene gas, and then they would light the piece of rock because it was constantly producing acetylene gas. Not the safest way to coal mine, because if you're in a coal mine and you have a flammable gas pot, the last thing you want to be doing is running around with a candle on your head. So they made that move. But that's one of the weird things about carbide, is that you can actually set it on fire as a rock. So that acetylene we don't use a whole lot because it's a gas. But we can use terminal and internal alkynes. So every functional group that we talk about, we're going to talk a little bit about physical properties. The physical property of an alkyne is it's still a hydrocarbon. Still got carbon and hydrogens. But it's number 1, it has 2 pi bonds, which means all the reactions that we did last semester with pi bonds, in like chapter 12, adding Br to it, HBr, ozone, H plus H2O, I'm just touching the surface. All those reactions we did last semester, guess what we can do? We can do them again. Only we can do them twice, because I got 2 pi bonds. So that means on Wednesday, when we go over the reactions, hopefully you're like, oh, these are all the reactions that we did with double bonds. And then you'll say, oh, I remember them. Because if you don't say I remember them, then you're going to say, oh, I need to remember them. So if you still remember your alkene reactions, you're going to be good for alkynes. There's a couple that are new, and I'll go over those. Okay, so that's the first sort of physical property, is we've got 2 pi bonds to act as nucleophiles. The second is it's linear. The C triple bond C is a linear. It's sp hybridized. So that's going to create a little bit of a difference in terms of the physical properties. And though also when we talk about doing anti-Markovnikov addition, we're going to have to do something a little bit more when we do that reaction. But I'll talk about that on Wednesday, or you'll see that for Wednesday. Okay. Chemical properties. So if we have a terminal alkyne, that means that if we have a strong enough base, we can deprotonate the terminal alkyne to form what's called an alkynyl anion. And so when we look at an alkynyl anion, the first thing we could say is it is a strong what? It's a strong nucleophile. It's also a strong base. So this alkynyl anion can be used as a base, or it can be used as a strong nucleophile. So we've got to kind of figure out which it's going to be. Well, first let's deal with the base. What base should I use to deprotonate this? Well, this is a C-, and typically, remember, C- is the strongest base of all. So how do we get a base that's stronger than C-? They do exist, but not in this class. This triple bond is actually not quite the strength of a C-, of a regular C-, like an alkane. So the base that we can use to do this, to do the deprotonation, is NH2-. And remember, NH2- last semester was our small, strong base. For those of you that weren't in first semester with me, we use NH2- as a strong, small base. And then we use the potassium tertiary butoxide as our sterically hindered strong base. The small base produces a double bond that's most substituted when you do E2, and the tertiary butoxide removes the hydrogen that's the least sterically hindered. So in this case, we're going to use NH2- to form that alkynyl anion. When we're making our alkynyl anion, we can now use it as a nucleophile. That's my first goal, is to use it as a nucleophile. So what can I do with that? Well, I can take my alkynyl anion and I can react it with something like a primary halide. If I have a strong nucleophile with a primary halide, what kind of reaction is that? Sn2. Do we agree with that? Strong nucleophile plus a primary halide would be Sn2. I agree with that. Okay. Primary halides can only do what? Sn2. They can do E2 if we used a strong base. We're going to treat alkynyl anions as strong nucleophiles first. And they're not sterically hindered, and so we're going to treat them as if they were a strong nucleophile. They'll act as a strong base in a moment. Okay, so then what happens? Sn2 reaction, our standard Sn2 reaction, and so now what I can do is now I can alkylate, or I can do an alkylation reaction to put an alkyl group at the end of the alkynyl anion. Now, most books call this a synthesis method. This is a way to make a triple bond. And my argument with that is, well, is it really a synthesis method to make a triple bond from a triple bond? That's not really. I mean, it'd be better if we made the triple bond from scratch. So this is a synthesis method. There's two variations of this. We can do this with a primary or a secondary halide, right? This will be an Sn2 reaction if it's primary or secondary. What happens if it's a tertiary halide? Let's say I try and react my alkynyl anion with a tertiary, like T-butyl chloride. What's going to happen? Melanie? I'm going to get an E2 reaction. Why? Well, the nucleophile, the alkynyl anion is going to want to act as a nucleophile. That's every strong nucleophile. I'm going to give these personal characteristics, even though they don't have them. Every strong nucleophile it's got two different identities. It can act as a nucleophile, it can act as a strong base. So which one does it choose? Typically, it always chooses to act as a nucleophile first. It wants to attack and kick off the leaving group. And when it's stopped from doing that, we can say it gets angry, and then it goes in and it rips the hydrogen off to do an E2 reaction. And so alkynyl anions, first of all, want to act as a nucleophile. The problem here is that it would want to do Sn2 with the alkyl halide, but the alkyl halide, a tertiary alkyl halide, can't undergo Sn2, can it? And so it's too sterically hindered, so this thing tries to do Sn2. It can't, so it turns around and it rips. Remember, this is the alpha carbon. This is the beta carbon. That's the beta hydrogen, so it's going to come in, grab the beta hydrogen. The pair of electrons are going to move there. The chlorine gets kicked off so that we end up protonating the alkynyl anion, and then we end up with our alkene. So this did an E2 mechanism.
Should that be RC2 triple bond C instead of HC?
Yeah, I mean, I said we didn't do things with acetylene, but I'm using acetylide ion. It's either one is fine. So I'm going to do E2 when this is tertiary. So when it's primary or secondary, the alkynyl anion is going to do Sn2. When it's tertiary, it's going to do E2. Now, question. Is it going to act like NH2 minus as a small base? Or is it going to act like terse butoxide as a sterically hindered base? What's your thought? Okay. Let's see. Is this the correct one? It is. So I already have the names loaded into the, for those of you who are not familiar with the spiral wheel of questions, then I can ask the question. See, I appear to be super organized. That's going to end tomorrow. Trust me. Josie, your name came up. Just give me what you think.
I was just asking her, I'm confused where the third carbon went on the alpha.
Where the third carbon went?
Somehow there's 3 carbons of the chlorine.
Okay, so this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, and this is number 4. So this one's 1, this one is still the middle 2, and then these 2. So it looks like this. So 2 and 3. So I just moved 2 and 3 that way. Right. So, what was the question? Oh, is the alkyne? So remember, we've got NH2 minus and terse butoxide. If I'm going to do E2, am I going to treat the alkyne like NH2 minus, small, so that I make the most stable double bond? Or am I going to treat it like terse butoxide and remove the hydrogen that's least sterically hindered? Okay, you're right. Why? Okay, that means that the alkynyl anion's like NH2 minus. So in this case, because this is linear, because this is a linear geometry, and this is actually the carbon is removing the hydrogen, that will basically be small, and it won't be sterically hindered. So we can treat alkynes for the most part as if they were small bases. So that means that we're going to make the most stable double bond. And another way to make the argument is just to say, because of the linear geometry on the triple bond, it's not going to be sterically hindered. So it's not going to be tertiary butoxide. So that's two of the three things that we can do with this triple bond. The other thing we can do with an alkynyl anion is add it to a carbonyl, and then the reactions to make it. So what I'd like you to do is to look at the video or look in the chapter, and then on Wednesday we'll talk about, or I'll ask you about how to make the triple bond, doing a double elimination, and then we'll go from there. So I need to get you your Scantron forms. So, if you just come over here on your way out, I'll give them to you. Sarah, you got yours.
Yeah. I got nothing.
Not yours. Ashley. Sydney. Lexi. Kristen. Bradford. Ben. Julie. Michael. Joe. Sydney, Lexi, is that yours? Joseph, Carolyn, Ryan, Rachel, Alexa, Taylor, Greg, Katie, Lucy, Laura, Krista, and Hannah, Hope, Haley, Early, Maddie, David, Olivia, Amy, Jacob, and so I know when did you add it?
Yeah.